Hi, welcome. This is Trump 100 and Mark. It's our Q&A session. I'm James Matthews. Mark Stone.
I'm Mark Stone. Hello.
We're
doing this live today.
Live and unleashed. There is no going back. You've very kindly sent in questions for us, which we're going to endeavour to answer. Looking forward to it, Mark?
I think so. Yeah, there have been some really good questions. We set up the Trump 100 at sky.uk email, and loads of you have been emailing. So thank you very much. We're not going to be able to get to all of them.
Yeah,
but we'll get to some of them.
Maybe
for sure.
7, 8, 9. We've got 15 minutes, so let's get cracking.
We also keep the ones that we don't use, so we'll try and get to them in subsequent weeks if we can.
Yeah. Rob Sarr, thanks for your question. You've asked this: surely all the recent orders that Trump has been signing off are illegal. Why is nobody stopping him and his bully tactics? And Aidan, you ask, are there now any checks on Trump in the United States, or can he just do what he likes? What do you think, Mark?
Well, there are checks. He can't do what he likes, and we've seen evidence of that with the courts getting in his way, as he would see it, over the course of the past. What is it? How many days in are we now?
20-ish, something.
We've seen the courts, blocking various different aspects of the legislation, of the executive orders that he's trying to push through. Some of them are seen to be unconstitutional, that they will require a Congress to get involved. For example, the birthright citizenship issue. He has said that he wants to end the right for anyone born in the United States to be American. That is a constitutional issue, requires a change to the Constitution, which itself requires an act of Congress. And so there have been roadblocks put in Trump's way over the course of the past couple of weeks. That said, it does appear that he is pushing every boundary and trying to do everything he can to get his way. And remember, he has control of both houses of Congress at the moment, which helps him hugely.
Well, it does, yeah. It undermines the process of impeachment, of course, which would be the first stop in terms of political prosecution. But in terms of the courts, we are seeing on birthright citizenship and other matters, this business of resignations of federal workers, that's been challenged, that's been put on pause. The courts are being tested, and that is where the checks and balances really are going to lie, I think. That system, that process of going through the courts. We also see protests. We've seen crowds. Many questions about where have the protests been. We're starting to see them, aren't we?
I think
Capitol Hill yesterday.
I think I was watching the cable news channels this morning, and it was clear that Democrats who they had on are beginning to panic massively, and they believe that stuff that Trump is pushing through is based on misinformation, and voters are being misinformed. For example, USAID, the US government's aid arm, effectively giving money to developing countries, that has been completely sort of wiped out over the course of the past couple of weeks. Democrats are saying that if the American public support this, it's because they don't actually understand, they're not being given the right information about what USAID actually does. And so I think they are now calling for their representatives across the country to go out there, to protest, to tell people what's actually happening across the country. So I think we will see a bit of that.
Yeah, I think Democrats, they are used to more traditional politics, Biden politics, reaching across the aisle, bipartisan agreement. I think they're realizing they're in a different ballgame now and are slowly catching up. The crowds of protests are interesting to me. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, we saw crowds. In amongst it, we saw a January the 6th prisoner who was kind of counter-protester. So
who feels emboldened, I'm sure.
Well, exactly, and that's the question. You've got this crowd protest dynamic where you have protesting crowd, January 6th protester, law enforcement, who may become more engaged as things escalate. But where does the power lie? Where does the authority lie in that? You've got the protesters, the January the 6th, who has been pardoned by the president. January 6th protesters have been pardoned. Individuals who were violent, who attacked police officers on January the 6th. So what's in the mind of law enforcement in a situation like that? Moving forward, if we do see growing street protests, I think that's a central question. Where does authority lie to rein in, ultimately, Trump?
And there was actually a link question which was to this. which I'm not sure we were going to necessarily answer, but in one word, someone said, can the American president be overthrown, or can there be a vote of no confidence in him in the way that there is in the UK? The answer is no. It has to be impeachment. And impeachment effectively is a matter for the lawmakers on Capitol Hill. The House kind of acts as the accuser in a impeachment trial, and then the Senate conducts a trial. And if he is found guilty in the Senate, then he can be removed from office. That's kind of the only way to do it. And of course, as I said, Donald Trump controls both houses, so it couldn't happen at the moment. That wasn't one word, but there we go.
No, sure. Sorry, just in terms of the court process, all the way to the Supreme Court, if that's where it goes, conservative-leaning judges appointed by Trump. If the Supreme Court rules against Trump, what happens then? Who has the power to enforce such a rule? If we see Trump purging the FBI right now, Kash Patel, if he is nominated as director, if he's confirmed as director, this is an individual, who has spoken of retribution, no fan of the FBI. So, who enforces the power of the courts, whatever they decide is a question.
Yeah. Let's move on. Linked to this stuff, obviously, Project 2025, Raymond 45 asks us, with everything that's going on in the USA, is this the start of Project 2025? And should we be worried about the world's most powerful country turning into an autocracy, James?
I think we're already seeing Project 25 and its tentacles in the government. We saw it yesterday. A man by the name of Russell Vogt was confirmed. He's going to be Donald Trump's budget chief. This guy, has been in government before in the first term, in a senior influential position. He is a white Christian nationalist, controversial. Democrats see him as, they call him the most dangerous nominee. Once described Muslims as condemned, has discussed immigrants before, discussed prioritizing Christians over other faiths. One of the architects of Project 2025 has called for a total ban on abortion. So, these are the kind of voices of influence that are in power, that have the ear of the president's questions about, politics of Project 2025 and the politics of religion.
Yeah, and just to remind anyone who's not familiar with Project 2025, this was a kind of blueprint for government that was written up by the Heritage Foundation. They've done it every year since, I think, the days of Reagan. The Heritage Foundation is a right-wing conservative think tank here. Every election year, they put together their blueprint, what they think America should look like. And this particular one had a lot of people, a lot of authors within it, 900 pages, who are closely associated with Donald Trump. And in April 2022, he called them a great group. He said this is going to lay the groundwork, detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do. And yet, during the election campaign, he kind of distanced himself from it. Trump saying last summer that this had been designed by people on the severe right, and that he had nothing to do with Project 2025. But as you say, James, what we're now seeing is lots of the stuff that's in there is happening. Rolling back LGBTQ plus rights, tick, that's happening. Rolling back climate commitments, tick, that's happening. I saw just now that Donald Trump wants to bring back plastic straws. You seem to think that's a good idea, James.
Well, actually, it's the wooden cutlery that I would heartily endorse. We'll see if he gets that far.
Yeah, so I mean, bring back plastic seems to be today's message from Donald Trump. He is harnessing what some people across the country, across the world, maybe think paper straws aren't very good. But, he's now extending that, saying let's bring back plastic. So rolling back climate commitments, Project 2025, Trump, tick. Mass deportations of immigrants, tick. Gutting the federal workforce, tick. Lots of the stuff that he distanced himself from just a few months ago, he is now putting in place with remarkable and efficient effect.
Yeah. On to Elon Musk. Graham, you've asked, has an unelected person ever wielded so much power in US politics as Elon Musk? And Gary Heath, your question is, how long are you giving the Trump-Musk bromance? Does it show any signs of a fallout?
Answer to the first question, no. Answer to the second question, no. I'd say.
Yeah, on the first question.
I can't think of anyone. Can
Benjamin Franklin, one of the founders? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Can't remember back that far. But he certainly has power, Elon Musk. I mean, They call him the first buddy, don't they? Offered
The co-president.
co-president, you name it. He's got loads of power, and the question is, where does where does the power lie in that duo? Elon Musk has been given a free rein of sorts, to slash the federal government, and Donald Trump insists that he reports to Trump. But I think in terms of never mind the politics, the personal dynamic of that duo, I mean, I think that is critical in terms of how long it lasts and how long Musk is allowed to stay, close to Trump and close to power in a position where he can make key decisions. It's certainly what he wants to do, and I mean, I don't see it lasting. Do you?
Well, no. In a word, I don't know how long it'll last. But the thing about Elon Musk is that he is, in a sense, a product of the American dream. An immigrant, a hugely successful man in many different ways. The problem that people have with him being in government in the way he is that there don't seem to be any checks and balances. He didn't go through any process of nomination on Capitol Hill, like, for example, the Defense Secretary did, all the other cabinet members. They went through this process where they were, rigorously interviewed by a panel of elected officials before they were confirmed. That hasn't happened with Elon Musk, and yet he appears to be wielding extraordinary power with an office and a team of also unelected people in the Oval Office. Well, not in the Oval Office, but in the White House.
Yeah, and the thing about Musk, he's been given access to government departments, CIA details, social security numbers, private details of American individuals across the country, but also, secure information that America will want to keep secret. So he's been given access to all of this. He's a businessman, knowledge is power. That kind of detail empowers him. If it does all go pear-shaped, then what does he do with that? Where does he go? He's a man with a loyalty to himself, principally, primarily. To what extent does that undermine American national security? And I think, you've got Elon Musk, you have Peter Thiel, you have all the tech bros. What do they get out of the donations they've made, the presence they have in and around the White House? These are individuals who, have made loads of money, who want deregulation, who want a certain type of society and culture. To what extent does Donald Trump bend the knee to them? And are we already at a stage, actually, where the power balance has shifted too far in one particular direction?
Yeah, that kind of leads us on neatly to a question from Anderson and a question from Annie's mum. I don't know if Annie's mum is an Annie that we know, but anyway, hello, Annie's mum. Anderson says, is Trump now a bigger threat to traditional Western values as Putin and Xi Jinping? And Annie's mum says, does Trump even realize that JFK set up the USAID program to prevent infiltration of rogue nations from influencing many of the poorer nations? He's just gifted Putin many new inroads. I mean, really interesting linked points there. The idea that USAID, the sort of development arm of the soft power arm of America, has been gutted from I think, was it 10,000 staff to just 200 or so.
Yeah.
Programs across the country paused for 90 days while Elon Musk and the government work out what are priorities and what are not. It's soft power gutted, right?
And USAID helps people. Prolongs their lives, programs on HIV and AIDS treatment, but soft power to the extent that it buys America influence in countries abroad, in dark corners of the world, where it allows America to keep an eye on its enemies. And, short of wading in and invading a country and seizing influence, it's a gentle power grab of sorts, which has clearly been undermined at a stroke. But in terms of Trump and the threat he holds to traditional Western values, I think there has to be a threat. I mean, this is a man who doesn't recognize the post-World War II consensus about peace and what constitutes peace and what prolongs the peace. I mean, he is upsetting the world order. He's a man who I think is an ally of the West, we think, because he's a US president, but he's done plenty to suggest that that may be under review.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in mutual benefit, Donald Trump. There has to be something in it for him. And he's spoken about grabbing land, Greenland.
But
his comments on Gaza are very serious questions.
But in simple terms, to the heart of those questions, if America is not filling the space in terms of helping developing world countries, then there is a vacuum, and into that vacuum, someone else will go. Whether that be Russia, I think probably less likely to be Russia, but certainly China will take advantage of that. And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier on, and USAID and gutting that outfit. The idea of misinformation and American voters not really understand. On the face of it, they see a headline and they a minute. Why should we be funding this, that, or the other in a faraway country? And when it is explained to them, so the Democrats would argue why this is happening, when the information is accurate, then they might be able to have a more informed judgment. One example that we discussed a few weeks ago that was sort of like everyone was like, "What on earth?" When Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House, as part of their sort of audit of USAID, she said they discovered that they were sending $1 million worth of condoms to Gaza, right? So that turned out to be completely false. What they were actually doing was sending a huge number of condoms to the Gaza province of Mozambique. There is a place in Mozambique called Gaza, and it's all about HIV prevention. So when you see the context or actually the accuracy, it kind of changes things.
Your question's answered as the rubber hits the road.
Right. I think the point is what Musk and Trump are doing is putting a sledgehammer to something that clearly, like anything, requires an audit every now and again. So there should be an audit, I guess, to see what this money is being spent on, see whether the current US government, the Trump government, whether the money being spent aligns with their values. But what they have done, so critics would argue, is just thrown the baby out with the bathwater, thrown everything out, and that has caused globally some real angst and some genuine life-changing moments.
Yeah, traditional Western values. I think a worry would be that Trump seems to value instability. Instability as a way of seizing control, and that has to be a long-term worry. Moving on, Steve in Spain, you've sent us a question on Gaza. Is it possible that Trump's idea to take ownership of Gaza and relocate its people elsewhere permanently is his way of shocking states in the Middle East and the wider international community into action to resolve the issue properly, rather than something he truly believes in? Mark, former
we're running out of time, but I'll but yes, in a word, I think that's possibly very likely that as with so many other negotiations or deals that he's trying to do, he comes up with something that is so crazy, so outlandish, so undeliverable, but because it's Trump, people think, well, maybe actually he could do this, and therefore from that like outlandish decision or announcement, come some slightly more realistic ones. And certainly it is the case that America, under Biden as well, has wanted countries in the Middle East to do more on the Palestinian issue. So maybe the prospect of America occupying another part of the Middle East will focus minds in the Middle East.
Yeah. Final question from Bob Shader. Having just returned from working in the USA for 6 weeks, how is it the UK media is insistent in stirring fear and anxiety on Trump when the ground truth in America is very different? People getting on with their lives, actually quite happy with progress and leadership. Thoughts on this, ? And common sense guy, that's not you, Donald, is it? Trump is doing what he promised his voters. What's the problem here? I think I would say quickly to that, Mark, it's early. We've yet to see the effects of change. I think it's also the case that people get their news from different news sources. It's polarized. And if you're a Trump fan, you're watching right-wing media, and you kind of probably think nothing's actually really wrong. If you're left-wing, further to the left, you get your news from further to the left, and you think, and you're running around with your hair on fire.
Yeah, common sense guy, I would say, is is right. Trump is doing what he promised he would do. Pretty much everything. And I think, we've talked about this before, but I think it is the case that Trump voters, a majority of people in this country, fell into two broad categories: those who believed he would do everything he said he was going to do, and so he is, and those that thought that he wouldn't actually do the more extreme things, as they would see it, that he turns out he is doing. So no, he is doing what he said he'd do, and that is what American people voted for. I think the angst and the concern comes with I guess misinformation, is that people are not truly informed about the consequences of the decisions and the executive actions that he's putting in place. As you say, it is early. He does things very differently. He thinks outside the box. He is not a politician. In some areas he may have some remarkable success, but everyone's holding on tight right now because America has never been in this situation, I don't think.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Thank you very much. These are our answers to your questions. Keep them coming. And if we didn't answer them here, hopefully we will get around to them in a future episode or on our podcast, Trump 100.
Yes, and if you are watching this on YouTube or somewhere else and you haven't discovered our podcast, then go and find it. On the Sky News app, down at the bottom, you will see the listen. Click on that. You'll find our podcast. Follow wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah. And
we'd highly recommend it.
Yeah. Daily, we're doing it.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.